Hi everybody. I'm pretty sure I know most of you actually, or I've seen you all around, so lovely to see familiar faces. I am really, really pleased to be here to talk to you guys about Dynamic Dog, what it is and how basically it can really help, I'm hoping, with you and your either your dogs or your clients' dogs or any dogs that you kind of work with. Dynamic Dog is a bit of a game changer, to be honest with you, and I wanted to kind of let you know how it's kind of reshaping the dog training industry and how it can help elevate your work and fix potentially some pain points that you might be experiencing. As a way of introduction, my name is Anna, as Sasha mentioned. I've also got Victoria with me on the call. She's waving currently. Victoria's on my team and she's just recently qualified as a dynamic dog practitioner as well. So there's two of us here that are qualified to do it. I have been a trainer for over 10 years and I generally, I do and the team work with most types of training and behaviour cases. But kind of my main focus in the team is dogs with who are struggling with kind of fear and anxiety behaviours. And Dynamic Dog kind of plays a really, really big part in that. Though I would say Dynamic Dog also plays a massive part in all the other stuff that we do as well. And I'll explain a little bit more about this as we go forwards. So when I was, before I kind of got qualified as a dog training practitioner, I was learning more and more about behaviour in my job. And I was realising how intrinsically linked the behaviour and training side is to health. I think there's a real positive shift at the minute in the industry compared to when I started, at least, around our understanding of how physical and mental well-being of our dogs is. It has to be addressed, not only in the behaviour work, but also in just kind of basic training in everyday lives with our dogs. At this time, the behaviour cases that I was working with were getting more and more complex. And though my clients were making loads of progress through kind of behaviour modification, there was something missing and we just weren't getting to the crux of the problem. I also started to see and notice when dogs were broken. I was seeing it more and more. I could see the signs and I'm thinking, oh gosh, this dog isn't moving quite right. And I was getting more and more familiar with seeing whether there might be something physically kind of impeding our progress in our training, because I could visually see what was going on with the dogs as well. At the time, a major stumbling block for me was that I just didn't have the confidence to talk to the vets. I wasn't and still am not a veterinary behaviourist, so I was worried that they wouldn't take me seriously. I was sending clients to the vets directly to get a full in-depth check, and every time they came back saying the vet said that the dog was absolutely fine, clean bill of health, no problems whatsoever. Everything that we were experiencing with them was purely behavioural. So this is where I heard about Dynamic Dog Process, which had only really been going for about a year or so, I think, before I joined. To let you know a little bit about the process, if you don't know, the course is designed and run by Gemma Hodson. It is the only accredited course that teaches professional techniques in spotting potential discomfort in dogs. Well, it was when I did it. Just need to double check that's still the case. But basically, it's a pretty intensive 4-month course. Sasha will tell you I was having a small mental breakdown through doing it. But I highly recommend it for anybody who's interested in knowing more. And if you do want to know more about the course itself, I'm really happy to just jump on a call with you and have a chat about it. Of course, you can give Gemma a call. It's a super popular course. She's currently filling up her June intake for next year, and it's popular for really good reason. Okay. So in the course, the main points of what we covered were getting to know what good posture and movement looks like. That was obviously the kind of bread and butter point of the course. And it was really interesting to discuss things like what is common in some breeds isn't always, well, generally isn't normal. As an example, it's really common for bulldogs to not be able to breathe. That isn't normal, and that's something that they struggle with. Okay, sausage dogs are always, or it's very common for sausage dogs to have back problems. They shouldn't have back problems. Dogs shouldn't have problems with their back. It's not where we want them to be in life. So that difference between kind of normal and common and what we are expecting our dogs to look like and what we've kind of bred them into over the years was a big part of the course, so we can understand what we were looking for. We were also taught how to use specific observational techniques. So it's not just a case of, well, this dog looks a bit funny. We are super particular about how we measure that, how we observe that, and how we then collect that as kind of records to send to the vet. And we present these findings to the vet using vet terminology in a really kind of concise and particular way. So it means that vets can pick it up and it looks super professional. It looks like we know what we're talking about. And it's really clear and easy for them to get the information that they need in a really short space of time, because obviously they don't have a lot of time to work with clients when they go in. So the basis of it was getting to know the dogs from the inside out, and also understanding kind of everyday tasks. So sometimes we can't necessarily notice how our dog is moving, but it might be that our owner says to us, well, actually, my dog stopped jumping in the car. They used to be fine jumping in the car, but now they can't. So even those little kind of key points that have changed might signal that something's going on for that dog. And all of this allows us to put a case forwards around spotting the potential pain and discomfort. So there was a big gap in the market. We had trainers and behaviorists that knew that there was something fundamentally wrong with the dog that they were working with. We had owners that didn't know enough really to communicate all of this to the vet themselves. And then the vets were not able to spot the pain in the consultation room for a whole heap of reasons, which I'll come on to in a second. So we had a dog that was potentially struggling with something, but nobody was able to help. I think to understand the dynamic dog process fully, it's really helpful to understand kind of pain in dogs and what that looks like, because it's not always as straightforward as it might seem. And to be honest with you, it's really similar for humans as well. Pain in dogs from an acute perspective is much easier to acknowledge. They run through a barbed wire, they twist their leg, it happens in the moment, they go, ah, I hurt, and then there's, you know, a rush to the vets and we get that sorted. Chronic pain is very different, and dogs are not very helpful because they basically don't really show it. It's not very obvious in an obvious way to us anyway. And most of the time your dogs will continue as normal. They will run around like crazy things, they will jump up and down, they will want to go for a walk. But how chronic pain generally shows in dogs is the way that they act, their behavior, and the way that they take on their kind of outside world. So it's not always a limp and a cry. Behavior that might kind of link to pain, there's a whole list of these things, but some of the more common ones: reactivity to specific triggers, growling and snapping, resource guarding, sound sensitivity is a big one. Sound sensitivity and pain go massively hand in hand. Body sensitivity, hyperactivity, or restlessness. So they're kind of some of the big behavior points that we really commonly see come through, and they are generally linked to some sort of pain or discomfort. But it happens from a training perspective as well. And this is why I was saying that it's not just our behavior cases that we do this for, because things like reluctance to offer a position, for you guys who are trainers and you've had those dogs where they just won't do a lie down, they just can't seem to figure it out. Sometimes that's because they're uncomfortable, and lying down actually is really uncomfortable for them. So sometimes them not being able to do something that you think that they should be able to do can be a sign that something's not quite right. Those dogs that find it difficult to concentrate or self-settle, those dogs that just can't switch off and stop, they just need to be doing something all the time, that can be a sign of chronic pain. Really common one, they don't like the harness or lead. A lot of my dogs will do lead ragging and try and kind of like bite and mouth when they're having something put on them, or freeze completely when there's something on them as well, which makes sense, right? If your body is feeling a bit horrible, the last thing you're going to want is things touching you and being on you and controlling your body when you're already feeling a bit restricted. And then a really interesting one is excessive pulling on the lead. So if you guys have clients where they've come to you for lead walking and you've tried everything and you've done all the bits and the pieces and the behavior work, and the dog's just still determined to pull and go really fast, a lot of our dogs who are in pain find it more comfortable to go faster than they do to go slower, and a lot of them will try and plow forwards the whole time. When we do our video analysis, it's really interesting because a lot of those dogs move more comfortably in trot than they do in walk. And if you think about it, it's probably easier to kind of just keep going if you're hurting, rather than walking slowly and feeling every tiny second of that pain. Yeah. So excessive pulling on the lead can be linked to chronic pain as well. So we start to get dogs who don't necessarily look like they're in pain from looking at them in a typical way, but they are showing these behaviors and these reluctance in daily life that might suggest that something's going on for them. I will always use myself as an example. I have chronic pain. I've had 4 hip surgeries in the last 8 years. The surgeon, my 2 surgeons, will tell you that I'm fine. X-rays, CT scans, MRI scans will tell you that I'm fine. I've had them all, but I still hurt every single day. But if you guys were to meet me and to look at me, I don't think that you would be able to tell that I was in any pain at all. but the impact it has on me is that my concentration levels go down. I'm easily triggered. I potentially don't want to be hugged and touched as much as normal. So there's other things that kind of my pain affects, and it's not just me limping around and going, "Ow, my leg hurts." That'll make sense. So because these signs are so subtle, and because people don't always know to look for them, these signs can honestly go unnoticed for weeks, if not years. A lot of the dogs I've worked with from a dynamic dog perspective have had things wrong. I'm working with dogs who are 5, 6, 7 years old, and that's not because it's a new condition, that's because they've always had it and it's just gone missed that whole time. Undiagnosed pain will affect the training and behavior modifications plans put in place. So if you guys are not seeing results from your dogs and for your people, we have to look inwardly at a health related aspect, because if that health aspect for that dog is not right, that behavior modification plan is never going to get to the place that you guys want it to get to. Okay. Chronic pain can be suppressed from consciousness, but processed by emotional and cognitive changes. That's a posh way of explaining what I just said. So chronic pain doesn't always present itself in the front of the brain. It can be suppressed relatively easily. A really lovely example of this is people who run a marathon. If we've got any marathon runners on here, please shout, because I'd love to hear about it. But you watch people run a marathon and then they stop and then they like die, right? And they just collapse on the floor, and it's like, well, hang on a minute. But there's a part of our brain that is able to suppress the pain that they feel if it's worthwhile doing it, or if that adrenaline is high enough, or if the goal is worthwhile. And then as soon as they stop, then they feel everything and that adrenaline runs out, and then that's where that pain kicks in. So we're really good, both humans and animals are really good at suppressing that pain if we need to, for a whole heap of different reasons. Another example is if you see, a deer that's just been born with a broken leg, but they're being stalked by a wolf, that deer will stand up and try and run. They will suppress the pain of the broken leg to run to survive, because that adrenaline takes over. So suppressing pain, when we think about it, isn't that surprising. It's just that our dogs are really good at doing it on a daily basis. Okay. So why is none of this picked up at the vets? That's the big question. Generally, there's a few reasons. Appointments are just not long enough. I heard of one vet, bless her, she was Brazilian, I think, and she came over to the UK and basically went back to Brazil to practice, because the general length of a consultation was 45 minutes out there. It's about 10 over here. And she just couldn't understand how we got anything done in this country with a 10-minute appointment. She's like, it's just impossible. So it's a bit like seeing the GP, right? You're in, you have a quick check over it, you're out again. There's generally, vets are so busy, they don't have enough time to look at the bigger picture and ask all of the questions that need to be asked. Therefore, their investigation isn't always thorough enough, and they're unable to kind of take into consideration that individual dog's tolerance to pain. Now, remember, guys, that pain is a really subjective thing as well. How I feel pain might be really different to how somebody else feels pain. So that could be the same for our dogs as well, okay? The short time that they have in the consultation room, basically vets don't have the time to watch the dog move. I've heard of a few vets that do kind of take them out into the car park and get them to walk around, absolutely. But with all the excitement that's going on in that environment, even walking around is probably not going to be how they really move on an everyday basis. Owners don't really know what information to share to their vets, which isn't helpful for their vets, obviously, because they don't have all the information that they need. The dog's either too stressed or too excited, and remember that adrenaline helps the dogs to mask the pain. Even if they're super comfortable at the vets, we think now that dogs mask their true emotions in a new place for at least the first kind of 10 minutes. So how long is a vet appointment? 10 minutes. So that true response to being handled is hardly ever shown. Even with all of that aside, going to your vet and saying, I think there's something wrong with my dog, in all fairness to your vets, it's a bit like finding a needle in a haystack. If that pain is coming from the middle of their gut, the chances of the vet being able to pick that up in a 10-minute consultation with no other investigations is really difficult, okay? And so just like the GP, when we go to them and say, there's something wrong with us, they don't have a bigger picture to be able to make that assumption. So most of the time, our dogs get given I can't feel anything, I can't see anything, they're probably fine, and then come back to us. Just to give you guys a bit of context, probably in year one of my being a dynamic dog practitioner, It took me a little while to kind of set myself up with it. So towards the end of the year, I'd probably done the process with about 30 dogs. 9 of those had something wrong with their hip, and I'm talking like hip dysplasia, you know, big things. 6 of them had something wrong with their knee. 3 of them had some pretty bad spine issues going on. 2 of them had elbow issues. 3 of them I didn't know because I'd passed them back to their behaviourist to take those investigations forward with the vet. 5 were on pain medication and undergoing further investigations. I would say there might have been 1 or 2 of those dogs where the vet had already suspected something was going on. Every other single case had not been picked up at the vets at all. And that's with regular health checks. That's with really, really good orthopedic vets. That was with, you know, the full caboodle. But they were 30 dogs that basically hadn't got picked up on, which is kind of amazing when you look at the figures. So as part of the dynamic dog process, we look at the bigger picture. We need the bigger picture to be able to notice what's going on with our dogs. And the lovely thing is that we can then form a team around the client, the guardian, whoever's looking after the dog at the time. Everybody is a specialist in their own right, but nobody really talks to each other, right? Your hydrotherapist never really talks directly to your groomer, who never talks to your dog walker. So everybody's doing their own thing in probably a really good way, but nobody's looking at the bigger picture overall for that one dog. So what we can do as practitioners is gather relevant information from all these different people involved in the dog's everyday life and make sure that we are looking at everything, both from a diagnostic perspective, but also from a kind of caregiving and how we can make that dog feel more comfortable. We can also help advise on how to improve things for your dogs across the board. Obviously, you know, we could get a plan for the groomer, we can get a plan for the walker, and then make sure that the hydro team are reporting back to us as to what needs to be the next steps. So it looks at health. It's not just about the way that dogs move, it's about looking at health in a overall holistic way and making sure that we're making progress with the dog, which will help them feel more comfortable, which will then get you the results from a training and behaviours perspective that you're looking for. Okay, everybody all right so far? Okay, cool. Right, let me chat to you guys about how a dynamic dog assessment works. So it's a hands-free, in-depth functional assessment. Now, this is amazing because for all those dogs who want to bite you when you come anywhere near them, this process works really well because we don't need to touch the dog. Nobody needs to touch the dog at all. It's all done through photos and videos and collection of information. So we have a dog in a really natural, calm, normal state so we can see what they're actually like rather than having hands coming towards them and them immediately showing us a kind of skew-whiffed version of how they feel. It can be done virtually or in person. So most of the ones we do is virtually because obviously we don't need to see the dog. So that means we can work with people from all over the world. If it does need to be done in person and people need help with the photos and the videos, then that could be where we get, you know, the behaviourist or trainer involved to do the videos with the client and then send it to us. But most of the time we are very hands-off and we don't need to be, you know, interfering with the dog whatsoever. As I said, evidence is collected when the dog is relaxed and in their own environment. So we don't need to take them to a vet. We don't need to take them to a physio. It's all done at home where they feel the most secure. And then, as I said, takes a look at the bigger picture and we're taking all factors into account. Those factors, there's 3 kind of main ones. The first one is the conformation, the gait and the posture. So this is the spotting any anomalies in how a dog moves based on the knowledge of a dog's inner structures and system. Okay, so that's a really physical visualization of how that dog is moving, should they be moving like that. Our job is basically to pinpoint anything that's moving a bit funny. Okay. The second one is activities of daily living. So we review how our dog approaches the tasks in their daily routines. This is what I was talking about in terms of not wanting to jump in the car anymore and finding going up and down steps really difficult. It might be that they prefer a raised bowl rather than a lower bowl. It might be that they refuse to walk on slippery floors. So all the kind of daily stuff that owners are starting to struggle with or notice, we can take that into consideration to make sure that it's not a contributing factor. And then the third one is the behaviour assessment. So we're looking for any connections between the dog's behaviour and signs of possible discomfort. So this is what I was mentioning before about sound sensitivity, not liking their harness being put on, grooming is a real challenge. All of those things tell us that the dog is struggling with something, is pain or discomfort the thing that they're struggling with. In terms of the client or the caregiver or the dog guardian, step 1 is we do an hour deep dive assessment with them. So that's where we collect all of the information about those everyday tasks and what they're struggling with from a behaviour perspective. That can come directly from your client. It can come directly from kind of you as a trainer or behaviorist. But it's really helpful to kind of get into the nitty gritties. And one of my favorite parts of having these conversations with clients, especially, is that they start to think differently about what their dog is doing. So I'll ask them a couple of questions and they'll be like, oh yeah, this and this and this. And then they'll say, oh, hang on a minute. Actually, they've never liked being cuddled at night. Is that a thing as well? And I'm like, yes, it might be, because we know that dogs with body issues don't necessarily like being touched and cuddled all the time. Okay, so it gets them to start thinking about the bigger picture about how their dog is feeling and the choices that we give them. Step 2 is all the data gathering. So that's when we collect everything in and we make sure that we've got everything that we need from them. And then we sit in the background and beaver away analysing all of the evidence. That comes out in a kind of 2 to 5 minute video, a set of photos that are annotated and a report that goes alongside it. And then that report forms what gets sent to the vet so they can have a really lovely, clear picture of what's going on for the dog. We also obviously offer ongoing help and support and communications with the behaviour modification rehabilitation team. So if we're working with you guys, trainers, behaviourists, if we're working with groomers, if we're working with physios, we can absolutely keep them in the loop at every step, as much or as little as they want. Okay, so that's the kind of general process for the dynamic dog assessment. So let's chat about what you guys can have a look out for and what you guys can start to notice in terms of whether you need to question whether pain is an issue or not. Again, there are about 300 of these. I'm just going to list off some of the really common ones and ones you might not have thought of before. So of course, probably the more obvious one is reactivity and aggression, right? We're probably quite aware of the fact that if our dog is having a behavior issue like that, then potentially we need to look at the health stuff that goes alongside it. Odd movements. If you've ever seen a dog that hops when it walks, or my terrier people will know this very well, your dog shouldn't hop when it walks. It's just, it might be common in the breed, but it's not normal. Animals don't hop and walk at the same time. Sloppy sits, extra wiggly walks. Every time they sit, they lift their front paw up. It's really tiny things like that that can give us everything we need to know about how your dog is feeling and how they're moving. Slouch postures, just looking a bit, oh, everything hurts, I don't really like it, walking with their head low. Reluctance to maintain or offer a position. Again, if my dogs are comfortable with offering a sit, sometimes they're only comfortable with being in a sit for a split second and they have to pop out of it again. Might be that the sit position is really uncomfortable for them. As I mentioned, body sensitivity, including harness and grooming. Coat pattern disturbances are super interesting. I'll see if I can show, I've got an example here with the changing colour. I'll see if I can show you another example. But basically the coat that the muscle, sorry, that is underneath the coat, if that is experiencing tension, it changes the way that the coat grows on top. So if you do have dogs that have like this weird tufty stuff going up all over the place, or a weird change in colour, or it's a bit greasy or a bit dry in one area, that can either suggest where there's a problem, or it can suggest where there's compensation for a problem elsewhere. Just out of interest, my eldest boy, he had arthritis in his left hip, probably in both, but definitely in his left hip. And he formed this white ring of fur, like his fur just went white, and it was, the circle was about that big, and it was directly above where the arthritis was in his hip. It's fascinating. He didn't have it anywhere else, and that probably came on, he was 10 when we lost him. It probably came on about 8 years old. Never had it before, just this white ring. And that's when his leg got really bad and we got him into hydrotherapy. So it just shows you how much is on show on the outside of our dogs as well as the inside. Repetitive licking, just a heads up. So a lot of dogs who lick their paws, we immediately think that it's itching and allergy related. It doesn't have to be. A lot of our dogs will feel the pain where the nerves end, and that can sometimes be in the lower half of their legs. So they will lick there. Sometimes they do what we call flank sucking, where they kind of just attack one part of their body. That can be a sign that they're feeling some discomfort there and they're trying to make it better. Uneven ears. This little guy down here is a really good example. When dogs hold tension, most of the time one of their ears kind of goes tense as well. And sometimes you can get them holding their ear at a different position to the other. Can be a sign that there's discomfort going on. Obviously, any general signs of discomfort, inability to settle, and not liking the car is a really big one. We get a lot of dogs who just cannot travel in the car, can't settle in the car, cry, whine, pace, all that kind of stuff. And it's because obviously if you feel uncomfortable, then traveling in a car and being kind of on an unstable surface is going to exacerbate that pain. So traveling in the car is a big one. So in terms of the journey, and what we've designed kind of going forwards, working with professionals and clients, obviously we do this with clients directly, but when we're working with you guys and how we can help with you guys, the first thing to do is if you notice any of these things in your clients' dogs, to just book a call with us or just get in contact, because sometimes it's just nice to talk it through and go, hang on, I've seen these things in my client's dog, I'm pretty sure it's not quite right, am I on the right lines with this? And we can help you with that discussion with your clients and noticing whether it's actually worth mentioning or not. Then if it is, we can get you guys to ask your clients to book in a 30-minute free call with us, and then we can explain it directly to the clients if you guys want us to. So this explains the process to them, the benefits. I'll explain a little bit more in terms of detail and kind of how it works, but this is the general journey. We then support the client with all the information gathering normally via WhatsApp. And this group can include you or dog professionals as well. Whoever needs to be involved in that process can be in there. And then after completion, we can email our assessment report either to you or the vet or to any other professional it needs to go to. So sometimes I haven't sent it directly to the vet, I've sent it just directly to the behaviourist that's working with the dog. And then the behaviourist takes that with some other health assessments that they've done separately, and then they take that to the vet. Okay, and I'm just here to have a conversation if need be. As I mentioned, optional extras include us helping afterwards with things like tracking medication, following up from the vet appointment and getting them referred to physio, hydro, or whatever that process looks like. I think the really important thing is that we can keep you guys in the loop for as much or as little as needed of that process. Sometimes I get people that just hand their dog to us and go, help them please, and we take over. Sometimes the trainer or the professional will keep in the loop for the whole thing and help their client through it, and then we hand the client back at the end. Okay, so it's really open and we're here to help. So just wanted to let you know an example of how kind of we can help you guys. Jo is a lovely friend of mine. She runs Furry Tales up in Yorkshire. And she started off, as we all do, right, with a dog, bless her heart. She had a spaniel, or has a spaniel, who is very, very broken, like very broken. And she had a really hard time, and she got in contact with me about the dynamic dog process, and have been able to help her understand the link between her dog's pain and the behaviour that she's seeing, and they're doing really, really well. She now uses us regularly for her clients. So she works with a lot of behaviour clients, but she also does a lot of training stuff as well. So what Jo does, and it works really well, is that she'll have a conversation with her clients around how pain has an impact on the process that they're doing from a behaviour and training perspective. And she'll say to them, right, Anna's brilliant, Victoria, brilliant at spotting whether there's pain or not. Can you just have a conversation with them and let's just see if it's an issue and see if we need to get it covered? At which point she gives them a kind of link to book in a call with us. We talk to them directly. We explain to them, yeah, okay, we can see this, this, and this, because Jo's already sent us a couple of videos so we can see what's going on. Then we pass them back to Jo, and then if they want to book with us, then they book us in for a dynamic dog assessment. Jo then keeps in the loop with all of the progress with that. She also likes to join in with the calls that we do with the client where we present the results, so she knows exactly what's going on for that dog and where we're off to with it. And then either I help them with the future steps, or I hand them back to Jo at that point, and then she helps them because she's got really good kind of vet and physio contacts that she can forward them to. So it's working really well, and I think it's a really lovely way to offer you guys something in your training and behaviour journeys that just covers that kind of bridge where you go, actually, I know that there's something going on for this dog, but I just need a little bit of extra help. One, talking to the client about it, and two, potentially getting the dog this dog the help that they need. Okay. I thought it might be helpful to just show you guys a couple of case studies as well that we've done recently. These are shared obviously with permission from the owners, and there's two kind of different versions of them. This was Monty. I think he was about 1.5 years, 2 years old. And they gave us a call, and I did his dynamic dog assessment as part of his behaviour plan with me. So Monty's behaviour issues were barking and growling at other dogs that ran up to him. That kind of progressed to aggressive displays towards other dogs and people. Continuous barking at people in the house, inability to settle. He was always on the go, like not in a normal spaniel way, in like a switch has been flipped sort of way. Obsessed with toys and balls and pulling on the lead. He pulled like an absolute horse. And when I went round to their house for the first time, he spent the entire time getting a toy, bringing it to them, getting a toy, running around, getting a toy, bring it to them, getting a toy, running around, and just didn't stop. And I was there for about an hour, and he just did that the whole time. So really challenging, bless him. They were kind of at their wits' ends. Couple of reasons why you might not think that Monty was in any pain. He was generally, other than his behaviour issues, he's generally a happy boy. He never complained. He didn't look uncomfortable to anybody that didn't know what they were looking for. He would absolutely readily run around and jump on and off the sofa. He'd like launch himself off the sofa at full pelt. Regular checks at the vet. He's a little bit nervous at the groomer, but they didn't report any issues. And he always wanted to walk, and they basically couldn't tire him out. They could walk him for ages, and they played constant ball throwing, and they just couldn't tire him out. So did our dynamic dog assessment, and that was all sent to the vets, as I said, part of the kind of behaviour program that I was doing with him. Turns out that he had multiple degenerate intervertebral discs within the spine, mild chronic invertebral disc protrusion, and, to boot, a grade 2 patellar luxation. So Monty is now on long-term pain medication and a management plan. He's doing much better. I will tell you that he's not ball playing anymore, that's for sure. His owners, I think they've actually now just started hydrotherapy, and he's doing so much better. Just getting that pain underway and walking him less and managing his environment has helped him hugely, and getting that pain medication in to help him feel more comfortable. Okay. Just one other case study, because I thought it was quite interesting to show you something slightly different. Just have a look at Barney's coat. His coat was bonkers. He had this line here. He's got all these tufty, wavy bits around here. He's got all these bits around his legs. A lot of people would say that's just his breed. Really wasn't. This boy is in a lot of pain. And the difference with Barney is that I managed to pick this up in classes. He was about 6 months old. He was no problems with him whatsoever, just come from basic training. He was in my beginners class, and he was really challenging to train. He just couldn't settle. He just couldn't stop. They couldn't walk him. He either wouldn't walk, or if he walked, he pulled. It was just harder than it needed to be, considering how generally kind of chilled out he was. No behaviour concerns, but like I say, he did find it really difficult to concentrate in classes. He, interestingly, would not walk along his garage floor. They'd bring him in through the garage to get into the house, just point blank refused to walk on the floor, just wouldn't do it. He found it difficult to settle at home as well, constantly moving, not being able to sleep. He really didn't like cuddles. He never asked for cuddles, never asked for physical touch from his humans, was quite distant from them. And then he would come home from walks just absolutely exhausted. Even if it was a 20-minute walk around the block, he would be super tired. Now, he was interesting because the vet had kind of picked up that there might have been something going on with him, but they reckoned that it probably wasn't a major issue. So he was also, like I say, similar to Monty, really, happy boy. He had no behaviour issues, very friendly with dogs and people, regular vet checks, no limping, no yelping, no obvious signs of pain, and again, always wanted to go out for a walk. So convinced the owners to do a dynamic dog assessment. You guys might find it interesting to see how he sat in sit position with those legs at an angle. I don't even know how he sat like that, bless his heart. He was diagnosed with grade 1 patellar luxation, and the vets thought that was it. I'm like, right, that's what it is. That's his problem. I pushed and helped support the client pushing for further investigation, and it showed that he had hip dysplasia in both hips with possible new bone formation. He is also on long-term pain management. He regularly goes to hydro and has a physio that comes to him very often to kind of work with him. And I'm so pleased that we managed to catch it at such a young age, because I think he would have really struggled as he kind of got older, and if we let things sit as they were. And the vets and the owners were very grateful for us having that very difficult conversation with them at 6 months of age, which is always seems to be more difficult than doing it with an older dog where you expect it to happen. And that is me. I'm hoping that's been good. But that's a little bit about the dynamic dog process and how we can hopefully offer you guys some support in talking to your clients and, you know, offering this process as a bump up to what you guys already do with your owners and getting extra help with it, which I'm sure we'll chat about in a second.